Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack a truly hidden piece of history. Now, when most of us think of Scottish football, we probably just immediately picture the intense Old Firm rivalry between Celtic and Rangers, right? But today, we're going way back. We're looking at a time long before that dominance, a time when the working-class innovators of Scotland quite literally invented the way the modern world plays the beautiful game.
It's a question that honestly challenges our most basic assumptions as football fans. I mean, when we think of flowing, rhythmic, passing football, our minds instantly jump to the golden yellow jerseys of Brazil, or maybe the mesmerizing tiki-taka of Barcelona. But what if I told you the true origins of that beautiful technical style lie somewhere completely different?
Well, the answers are actually hidden in the academic foundations of the sport's history. According to some incredibly deep, systematic research, like the work done by Graham McDowell in his book The System, the modern passing game wasn't born on the sun-drenched beaches of South America. Nope. It was actually birthed in the rainy industrial parks of 19th century Scotland.
Okay, so to understand why, we have to set the scene. Picture the 1870s. The earliest versions of football were incredibly chaotic, relying mostly on brute physical strength. And early Scottish players quickly realized they were facing a massive physical and tactical hurdle when they came up against their southern neighbors in England.
You can really see the stark contrast in their philosophies here. The English played this kick and rush style. It was heavy on individual dribbling, raw brawn, hacking at each other's legs, and a tactic called backing up, which, honestly, looked a lot more like a modern rugby scrum than football. The Scots, on the other hand, were inventing something completely new. They called it combination play.
And the reason they had to invent this new style basically boils down to this number right here. 2 stone, which is about 28 pounds. See, in the first ever international match in 1872, the English players were, on average, a full 2 stone heavier than the Scots. Think about that. If Scotland tried to play a physical, running game against England, they were absolutely going to get crushed.
So the crucial takeaway here is that the beautiful game wasn't invented just to look pretty on the pitch. Combination play was a brilliant, necessary tactical solution to a huge problem. By passing the ball systematically and giving players specific positional roles, the Scots figured out they could exhaust their heavier opponents, totally neutralize that massive physical disadvantage, and exploit the open space. It was a real game changer.
Section 1. The Queen's Park Pioneers, the first great Scottish club.
Formed in Glasgow back in 1867, Queen's Park was so far ahead of their time that they actually supplied the entire Scottish national team for that very first international match against England in 1872. Their captain was a guy named Robert Gardner. He was a converted goalkeeper and just a brilliant tactician. Get this, his team's combination play kept the ball so far away from his own net that a Daily Record profile described him literally puffing a pipe on the pitch during matches just to relieve his boredom. Now that is dominance.
But you know, these early Scottish pioneers didn't just invent passing. They laid the very structural foundations for the modern game we all watch today. We're talking about the introduction of crossbars, the whole concept of halftime, free kicks, and assigning strict positions on the field. They practically wrote the rulebook.
Section 2. The Scotch professors export the game, a global proliferation.
So, having mastered this scientific approach to the sport, these working-class Scottish engineers, teachers, and factory workers started migrating across the globe during the Victorian industrial boom. And everywhere they went, they packed their footballs and their combination play. Just look at this staggering global impact. You've got Charles Miller and Thomas Donahue bringing the sport to Brazil, Archie McLean and Jock Hamilton teaching the locals how to pass and coach, Alexander Hutton founding the first league in Argentina, and John Harley doing the exact same thing in Uruguay. These working-class Scots essentially birthed the sport in what we now know as the absolute powerhouses of South America.
And the locals in South America didn't just casually play the game, they wholeheartedly adopted and perfected these Scottish short-passing tactics. In Brazil, they ended up calling these weaving short passes tabelinha, which translates to little chart. Over in Uruguay, the style was known simply as a la escocesa, which literally means in the Scottish style. This completely cemented the technical foundation for their future World Cup dominance.
Section 3. The Fall of Giants. Tragic Declines at Home.
Now here's where the story takes a really melancholic turn. While the legacy of the Scotch professors conquered the globe, back home, the very clubs that built this legacy suffered catastrophic declines. Queen's Park operated under the staunch, old-school motto, to play for the sake of playing. They were pure amateur idealists. But as professionalism, television, and big money took over the sport, their absolute refusal to pay players caused this incredibly slow, painful decline. It ultimately forced them to sell their historic home, the National Stadium in Hampton Park, to the Scottish FA just a few years ago, simply to survive.
But honestly, an even darker fate awaited Third Lanark, another founding giant of the Scottish League. Formed in 1872, they were highly successful for decades. But their demise came blindingly fast in the 1960s under the truly disastrous mismanagement of a chairman named Bill Hiddleston, ending in complete bankruptcy by 1967.
When Hiddleston arrived in 1962, it was such a disaster that it prompted the immediate resignation of the manager and the backroom staff. Outgoing director Robert Martin summed up the takeover with this incredibly chilling quote, "God help them and God save them." He knew exactly what was coming.
So what did Hiddleston do? He immediately sold off all the top players and enacted these absurd, highly destructive cost-cutting measures. I mean, match balls were whitewashed just so they looked new. Away teams arrived to find no light bulbs and no soap in their dressing rooms. Players were actually billed for their own club suits, and they were paid late in loose coins. In one particularly tragic instance, a player with a broken arm was told not to let the hospital cut his shirt off because the club didn't have any spares to give him. Just unimaginable stuff.
Today, Third Lanark is a ghost club. Their 50,000-capacity stadium, Cathkin Park, was totally abandoned. If you visit Glasgow today, you can still find it sitting derelict. Its ancient metal crush barriers are literally just rusting away among the trees in a public park. It's a haunting reminder of a lost giant.
Section 4. A shrinking talent pool. Systemic struggles.
The decline of these historic clubs actually connects directly to a much wider, systemic national struggle. To really understand why the architects of the game no longer dominated, we have to look at this massive demographic drop. During the golden era of the Scotch professors, male births in Scotland peaked at around 58,000 a year. Today, that average has plummeted to just 28,000. So the sheer size of the talent pool has practically been cut in half.
You combine that shrinking demographic with modern barriers like rising childhood obesity, and the pool shrinks even further. But tactically, experts note there's also been a loss of the very art that Scotland invented in the first place. A culture of fear has led to a de-emphasis on players shielding the ball, taking opponents on, and making those brave, short combination passes that defined their early success. But look, despite all these modern struggles, we absolutely have to remember the architects. The legacy of Scotland's working-class innovators is unparalleled. Armed with just sheer tactical brilliance, they didn't just compete on the pitch. They gifted the blueprint of the beautiful game to the entire globe.
Which leaves us with this lingering, provocative thought to close out our explainer today. The DNA of Brazilian flair and Barcelona's tiki-taka belongs, in part, to those rainy pitches of Glasgow. Knowing this incredible hidden history, the ultimate question is, can Scotland ever reclaim the magical footballing identity it gave to the rest of the world? Thank you so much for joining me, and as always, keep questioning the history of the game.